What's up, everybody? Hi. Hi, it's me again. We're here together at a quarterly update. I'm going to pray for the food so that you heathens don't have stomach problems later. Um, so, yeah, that first. First things first. I'll do first things first. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity we have to come together and, just talk about the future, talk about what has happened, to kind of debrief, and honestly, just stuff our faces with some amazing food. We are really appreciative of our leadership. Thank you for putting them in the positions that they're in, and help us to listen with really encouraged and excited ears about the future. Bless the food. Amen. All right, I have a couple of announcements before I throw Bob under the bus and make him talk in public. Nobody thought that was funny? I thought it was funny. Sorry. Do I not know my crowd? All right, we have a couple of STM and new staff announcements. Yeah. Global U has 2 new employees. If you have been around at all, you have seen, what? Did somebody say something? I'm hearing things. Yes, Lord? Has 2 new employees, Andrew Hake and Alina, is it Hake? Is that how you say his name? Hawk? Oh, like the Andrew Hawk and Alina Roby. They're the field mentors for Global U. I'm sure they're watching, so you should definitely cheer for them. Louder? Louder than that, maybe? Okay. They're probably crying in Spain right now, but okay, fine. We also have some new LTM staff, and I'm going to murder their last names, so I'm not going to use them. Nathan in the Cambodia, he's the local discipler. Feel free to pronounce his name as you see fit. Yeah, it didn't feel that easy when I was trying, okay? We have Brian and Shannon in Nicaragua at the sports ministry. Anybody want to go for their last name? Furches. All right. And Shannon and Vicky Bob in Cambodia, the regional base logistics and representative for the Cambodia base host. Now, one gigantic cheer for all of them. Hip, hip. Timing is everything, people. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. I'm sure they feel very loved by you. Great job, guys. Bob, your turn. I hyped the crowd, bro.
Thanks, Ben. We hired Ben because he's funny. Welcome to lunch, everybody. I have been given a lot of thought and prayer to how I approach today. And my hope is that you walk away with a little bit of fire in your belly for what you're a part of. That's my hope and my prayer for you guys. You know, in years past, we're now into our 4th year of laying out annual objectives that are in the framework of putting a target up for us to go after. And they're to be stretched. We want to stretch us. And so we've gotten better every year at doing that. And this year I had a few kind of expanded values that I wanted to get in place. In the past, I played a large role in crafting the objectives and in writing them down and working with just a few people to get them affirmed. And this year, we approached it quite differently in that we kind of created the frame of what we feel like God's doing in our ministry. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. And really, over the last 60 to 90 days, many of the leaders in the ministry have been working to form what God's doing in our ministry and what ground He's calling us to take next. In the past, we've organized them, as we have this year, in the space of mobilizing, training, and discipling to see God's kingdom established. And that's not going to change significantly this year. But I will tell you that in all of our discussions, from the board to me and Seth, to the operations leader, the OLT, and even rumbling up from some of our folks that give deep thought and prayer to what our mission is, we're looking at our mission statement that has some elements to it, and we're saying, you know, I think God may have something a little different in the midst of that. Our mission statement today is mobilizing a generation. The question would be asked, what generation? Because we're finding a very broad reach, not only domestically in the people that we mobilize, but in the people that we're sending to our bases and all around the world. We're training and discipling. What does that look like? What does it look like in the context of our mobilization ministry? But also, what does it look like in our partnerships with ministries that are on the ground all around the world? And so, in looking at all of that, we're reflecting. Seth and I, over the last couple of weeks, have been playing with some ideas. And if you've ever been in a meeting with Seth, you know you come in with tactics and you leave with a broad vision. Because he's got things in his spirit that well things up. And I love it. They're vigorous conversations for me. And recently I listened to a podcast that was by Simon Sinek that was really focused on not only the why, but the how we form ourselves around the why. And it was very compelling to me. And in thinking and praying about it, we began to talk about what it would look like to simplify our mission. At the core of what we do basically two things. We awaken people to who they are in Jesus. And we create a framework of opportunities for them to engage in God's mandate to cover the earth with His glory. From here to yon and everything in between. As I thought about what I would share with you guys, like 4 or 5 conversations kind of welled up in my spirit that are all within the last 30 days in terms of what that looks like in the lives of people that come through our ministry. And I'm going to start with some old, and I'm not even going to use names, but some of you will know the people that I'm talking about. But I'm going to talk about what the awakening looks like. From the rebel that went on a first-year missionary trip to Matamoros over a decade ago and was causing trouble down in Matamoros, found a girl there that he couldn't get along with, and over the period of a year or two ended up marrying her. And the Lord put a call on that man's life and his family such they became citizens of another country. And under the umbrella of the ministry that we get to steward every day is walking through a saturated church planting strategy that is taking ground each and every day in the Dominican Republic. That started with an awakening experience with the ministry that we get to steward. Then there's the young Asian lady that is very academically successful. She's from Washington, D.C. Each PSL, I'm taking the opportunity to meet with 8 or 10 pretty random folks that I had know nothing about coming off of squads. And with me not being able to travel much, my heart for that is to get to know them and then just get feedback for, is what we're doing working? If you were in my seat, what would you do different than me? So I asked this young lady, I said, tell me your story. She said, I shouldn't be sitting here. You see, I come from a family where education's highly important. And I was on the path. I got accepted to law school at Georgetown in D.C., and that was the path that I was on. But the Lord put a stumbling block in that path, and it was called the world race. And the world race for me changed everything. She said, well, what are you going to do now? She said, in my last month, the Lord told me I was going to change the lives of vulnerable children in Chicago. I said, oh, you got friends and family in Chicago? She said, no, I've never been there. The Lord told me that. I said, so what are you doing? She said, well, I just accepted a job in inner city Chicago to be a mentor. So I'm moving to Chicago. She was awakened, and out of that fabric, she's going to walk out what God's put in her life. Last week, where's Christina? Christina says, hey, I got a call for you I want you to take. And there's this dad. He wants to talk to you. He's a very successful business person, and his daughter went on ambassador twice and gap year again. And he then went on a PVT, but he's a business guy, so he wants to talk to you. I said, great. So I get on the phone with him, and we start to unpack his story. And he has chased the American dream and caught it and wrestled it to ground. I said, real estate. I said, I'm into real estate. I got a couple of rental houses. You're into real estate? He said, yeah, I built 200 Walmarts. You're really into real estate. He said, I got to tell you something. He said, when my daughter went on ambassador with you the first time, I was your biggest skeptic. He goes, yeah, I can go online and I can find all the reasons that my daughter shouldn't have journeyed with you. He said, but I went on a PVT to a country that on the ground when I arrived, there was no hope. And because of your deep commitment, and he said excellence, time and time and time again, he says thousands of lives are being transformed. He said, I can write a check. That's no problem for me. He goes, but something's bigger in this for me that I can't see. So I shared the story again of a man who's caught the American dream and made significant wealth as a function of it. He went on a short-term missions trip with his church to the very same country, and today is walking beside us in seven-figure investments in a long-term leadership training strategy in that country. You see, because we stewarded an awakening opportunity, and we created a fabric of walking that out. Sometimes it's under our umbrella, and sometimes it's not. In Chicago, it's not. In Swaziland, it may be. But in any case, we're all here from some sense of awakening and some sense of calling. As I was talking to Seth, if we erased everything we know about adventures today, and tomorrow morning I woke up and I just left a job, and a friend of mine came to me and he goes, I think I've got the perfect opportunity for you. He said, I've got an idea, but not just an idea. I actually have 3,000 people that like this idea. And the idea is this. I want you to lead a journey that takes people around the world and allows them to see what God is doing around the world, because God's winning. There are more believers on the face of this earth today than ever in human history. So we can talk about what's happening here in the U.S. all day long. But at the end of the day, He has His plans, and we are called into that plan. If I woke up tomorrow and we're invited into a grand journey that led to God being made known to those that don't know it, I wouldn't ask what my salary would be. I wouldn't ask where the job was. I would say yes. And the reality for me and for us is that's the opportunity that we have as I sit here today. So I'm going to walk you guys through a broad brush of our strategic objectives for 2020. And in the past, I made the effort to go through each one individually. The good news is I don't have to do that this year. Between now and the end of September, your OLT members are going to set meetings with each of your respective teams, and they're going to walk you through the why and the underpinnings of what are 24 targets that we've put for ourselves across the path of ministry that we get to steward each year. And the purpose of that is so that you can ask questions in an environment that you're used to working in, A, get an understanding, but B, you are also going to be responsible for setting the tasks that allow you and your team to achieve that objective that's forthcoming. So in the sense of awakening and in giving people an opportunity for their kingdom calling, I'm going to give you a quick brush of what we're going to focus on in 2020. Good. In the awakening component, there are a number of objectives, but at the heart of what we're doing is making sure that the underlying why and clarity for each program are written down, they're affirmed, we stack hands on it, and through the implementation of program managers across every area of ministry that we have, which is being affirmed as we speak, everybody knows who owns what. Beyond that, through the story brand process and marketing, this is not just a marketing strategy that we hope results in more people coming in. Although we do believe this is a good approach for us to get our message out, it has a broader purpose, and that is the purpose of telling the story of who we are and why you might consider joining our tribe. And we're going to do a lot better job of that in the context of the awakening over the next year. As it relates to walking out our calling over time, in our objectives, you're going to continue to see what has been a very emphasized effort over the last 2 to 3 years, and that is to continue to build our bases. The neat thing, as Ben was talking, most of the folks that you see up there are actually going overseas to strengthen our footprint around the world in many different dimensions. And we're going to continue to stay focused on that. Strategic ministry partnerships. Our regional field team, coupled with the training that we're all getting in the context of mission training, we are going to continue to form not just deeper partnerships with the ministries that we work with through STM, through Ambassador, through semesters, through PBTs going to bases. We're going to have plans that allow us to route our routes a lot more strategically. So instead of being wide, we're getting narrower and narrower so we can invest deeper and deeper. And you'll see that all built out here. The next piece is something that is a new term that doesn't describe anything more than we're already been trying to do, but it gives us a brand, and it's called the Global Kingdom Network. Ethan is particularly focused on this, and the heart there is through missional communities, through like-minded businesses, through like-minded ministries, through bases, and through our landing zones, that when people journey with us and there is an awakening, that we have connection to a network that may well be under our umbrella, like a base, or maybe a missional community, or it might be a partner that we're working with, or a business that have a kingdom mindset, so that we can create the connecting points to make all that possible. In the midst of that, we've taken the transition process to a whole new level. M2B was a pioneering partner ministry. They broke ground where we needed to be, frankly, woken up to some of what was happening as missionaries transitioned out of our network. Over the past 6 months, we've integrated those practices into our core ministry. And the coaches that are going to be available to all the people coming off the race are intended, A, to help transition, but beyond that, to continue to keep the wheels of progress moving so that they can stay in the path that God's given them and begin to put their hand to the plow of the kingdom of God. That's all going to be happening in our 2020 objectives. So let me give you some quick highlights if I can read the small print here. We're going to implement the story brand. It's already in place. The path is already in place. The marketing team's working actively with the programs. Our regional field team is casting vision for the trips that we're inviting you into, and we're taking a piece of thread and drawing it from the time that somebody comes to our website the very first time to the time somebody experiences our brand, that which we promised them over time. We're going to establish program managers and clarity around each program. We've been doing that over the years, but this year we are going to have an intent focus of saying, when you go on the world race, this is what the expectations are, and this is how we're going to achieve it. In the context of parent vision trips, we saw significant success from the very early stage initiative of taking parents to bases. And not just taking parents to bases, but bringing them into the story of that base through field ministry development plans, and then inviting them into the possibility of them being awakened to something that's greater than the American dream for themselves. The desire is to present them opportunities to invest financially, to bring their church back to our bases through short-term missions, and in some cases, even the possibility of them joining teams that are on the ground there. Our initial returns, both financially and in terms of interest coming back through STM, exceeded all of our expectations. The goal for next year is that 30% of our parent vision trip participants, which will be 600, Betty, something like that? 400, okay. That 30% of those, in a meaningful way, re-engage with the base ministry that they've done. We think that that's realistic based on what we've seen. In the case of activation, we also, how many of you have heard of rethinking retirement? This whole generational thing's getting messy because we now have parents coming to us like, something just happened here with my 22-year-old, and I think I've missed something. What do you have for me, right? And so next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend, we have our second Rethinking Retirement in Pennsylvania. We have about 30 people signed up. And the heart of this is to awaken the spirit of those that are in that season of choosing golf or the beach, for the possibility of choosing investing in a generation and engaging in what God has in store for spreading His glory all around the kingdom. And that's what we're challenging them with. We plan to do 8 of those over the next 12 months. So the eldership of our body is going to get a lot of investment over the next year. I mentioned the Global Kingdom Network. The website is developed. The back-end database is forming. And we are beginning the process of reaching out to ministry partners, missional communities, like-minded churches, and businesses so that when racers, gappers, and anybody else that's connected with adventures has a heart to engage in a kingdom way of life, that we present them with a fabric of opportunities to do that. We're expanding our alumni engagement pretty substantially. You're going to see how many of you were at the last PSL or got an opportunity to present the last PSL? Read maybe next. I think it's worthy. I think it would be a really good topic for the next fireside chat to step back and look at all the things that we have with the real heart of seeing people continuing to keep their feet moving in what God's called them to do once they walk away from this awakening experience. So, in all of that, we also have our BCWI objectives that are cornerstones in there. We have about 5 goals that are related to how we continue to try to build strength into the body that's here in Gainesville. 5 of the 24 are focused almost exclusively on that paradigm. So what does it look like us next year for growth? I mean, one of the things that I've been, I don't say convicted of, but the Simon Sinek's thought process was around finite leadership and infinite leadership. Finite leadership seeks to beat something. Infinite leadership seeks to take a set of values and see what a body can do with those regardless of the implication. It's a very different view on leadership. And I have found myself as a function of the contraction that we've experienced, feeling like I needed to manage a finite situation as it got smaller and smaller. And to be honest with you, in the midst of it, it's easy to lose heart. Some of the most significant conversations that I've had, without exception, I don't know, maybe 30 people that I've met in the last couple of PSLs have had a significant awakening experience under the stewardship of this team's leadership. And as a result of that, see their life being changed dramatically for eternity. That is something I'm interested in fighting for, right? That's something I'm interested in fighting for. But I have to be careful, and I'm coming with an apology, to not get focused on what's not happening or what goal's not being met or what financial objective isn't there. But at the same time, we're still stewards. So what's the balance in that? But I do feel the Lord calling us to an expansion of His footprint through our ministry, even if it's through a smaller number of people. One of the things that we've done in conjunction with our goals is we've developed a budget. And we're right at the finish line of the budget. Tara's putting the finishing touches on it today. I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of what it's looked like in a rearview mirror and what it's looking like for next year. In the rearview mirror, for 2019, on a net income basis, we'll lose about $1 million. Not getting into all the dynamics of it, the good news is, as a result of you guys working double down hard and focusing on our costs, our free cash position has held its ground, which is the Lord is in that. So we've got enough free cash to continue to march on and continue to gain health. And we've got some strategies to expand that. Going into next year, we're looking at the race being down versus even this year, over 20%. Gap year being down somewhat. STM being flat to a little bit up. Semesters being up, not an immaterial amount. And Ambassador being about flat. That financial picture does paint a much lower revenue number, but we are down at a very granular level, through some hard work of Tara and the accounting team and Jill and our leaders, that our budget going into next year is a solid $100,000 to $150,000 positive, despite all of that, because we've managed through a season of contraction. So with that, I want to tell you guys, well done. So next steps for you guys, your OLT between now and probably the end of next week, leader is going to be setting time with you to cast vision for the whole body of strategic objectives, to hand you a sheet for each one, for you guys to take a journey through those objectives, to pick out the ones that your teams are particularly focused on from ownership and accountability, and for you guys to build out the benchmarks, the milestones that need to be achieved for that objective to become a reality. Make sense? It's going to take us next to the BCWI. And I'm going to take a similar approach with the BCWI. I'm going to give you a broad view of the feedback we've received. I'm going to give you a picture of what we're going to do with that feedback. And then I'm going to point you back to your OLT member where he's or she's going to sit down with you and review the feedback for your team. They're getting it on a consolidated basis. So they're going to understand what you've told them about the nature of your engagement and adventures, and you guys are going to, and how that compares to the broader ministry, and you guys are going to work together through feedback sessions and through planning to say, how do we make this different and better next year? All right? So let's go to the BCWI slide. So the scale of a certified organization, which typically takes 3 or 4 years, is a 4.15 is kind of the mark as compared to other ministries in our place that have journeyed for 3 or 4 years and achieved what we call BCWI certification. When we first did this 2 years ago, we got a 3.70. Last year, we did a 3.85. The consultant would tell you that a 0.15 increase is excellent progress. So last year, we made solid progress. This year, we slid back a bit. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about what and why that looks in that way. With the contraction, we made a pretty substantial reduction in the number of members on our team last year. I won't get the number exactly right, but through predominantly attrition, but also through the hard choices that we made a few months ago, we're down about 35 people from this time last year, which is not insignificant. We ended up we wrestled a little bit because we handed out the BCWI 2 weeks after we made our reduction. But we did that intentionally. We want the feedback, and we didn't want to sugarcoat the feedback. So we did it anyway. And you can see it in the results. I think the easiest way for me to share with you what we're seeing is to give you the top 10 best things that you guys said are going on and the top 10 most challenging things. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. I'll start out with the most favorable. My supervisor supports me, and I feel encouraged by them. Leadership at Adventures models humility. Staff and employees at Adventures are encouraged to experiment. Leaders at Adventures explain the reasons behind major decisions. In my area, I feel like I have a voice. I feel like we're working better together, and I feel like we're achieving our mission on the field. Those are the top 10. On the downside, Adventures provides me with good job security, was number 1. Number 2, my retirement plan. Number 3, comparing my salary to other jobs, it's low. Number 4 is diversity on the leadership team. And number 5 is we promote highly competent employees. The reality is we did very little promotion last year as a function of what was taking place. And a lot of that feedback is telling us that there's a fear, which is understandable given the environment that we walk through. And so if you take all of the feedback and you group it, which our consultant does for us, there are 3 primary areas of focus that we're going to tackle. The first one is healthy communication. One of the things that was consistent is we felt like you were telling us that we were having issues, but we didn't feel invited into the conversation. And that's on me. And so there's going to be a lot of effort through written communication, through this venue and other venues to regularly draw us into a collaborative conversation about where we are and what we should do next, including the discussions that we're going to have on our strategic objectives over the coming month. The second is rewarding compensation. When things get tight and the compensation is not flowing, it's understandable. And we have not been able to do a good job of that. But we do have some very specific strategies that we're rolling out that are in the 2020 budget, without getting into specifics, that are going to roll out literally over the next 45 to 60 days that will address that primary concern. And the third is sustainable strategy. This is an interesting one because most people said we feel like we're winning and walking out our mission on the field and with our participants. I think the piece that probably in the comments that I could deduce from this is we don't feel like leadership has their arms around the financial strategy for the mission that's going to get us off of this path of continuing to wonder, is it getting smaller or not? Which is, to be honest with you, I was surprised by how much contraction we had last year. I didn't project it. I didn't do it. And so that's a reality that we're going to have to contend with. The next steps around these three is that we're going to develop focus groups within the next 10 days. These focus groups are going to be 4 to 5 people. There's going to be members from each level of management. There's going to be no 2 people from the same group on each one of these 3 tasks. And you're going to be responsible for understanding the issue, developing strategies, proposing solutions, and overseeing the walking out of those strategies in our body. We're seeking people that have a high view of the potential of Adventures in Missions. We're seeking people that have the core DNA of investing in the success of others, whether I'm responsible for them or not. Those are the types of folks that we want here. We're wanting people that deeply are committed to our mission. I think I should share my story. Should I share the story here now? Okay. You know, how do I tee this up? I'm passionate about what we do. Yesterday, I was talking to the OLT and to the program leaders, and we have this thing called feedback, but we don't always do it well. And I'm pushing our leaders to some vigorous discussions. One of the things that I think we don't do all that well is for Ben to have an idea and for me to walk up to Ben and go, Ben, I don't like that version of the idea. Have you thought about this? Well, no, Bob, I haven't. Well, why haven't you thought about that? Let's go. How can I help you? I got a different viewpoint on that, right? And we can argue, even disagree, knowing that we're likely to find some common ground that's between us that's stronger than any position that either one of us hold. And then we can go have a beer together because we're not mad at each other. We love each other, and we're so passionate about our mission. Isn't it worthy of arguing about? Like, there's got to be a better solution. So I was 31 years old-ish, and I was running an inmate telephone company, a thing to be very passionate about. And I had a guy that could sell anything, and he would sell things we didn't have. So he went to the state of Florida, and he sold almost a $20 million contract. It was like initial 13. It was a big contract. And I get the requirements, and I'm like, we don't have any of this stuff. And he was a big cowboy from Texas. And he'd be like, well, figure it out. And so I'm like, I'm not going to figure this out. I got 300 developers to work on project, and we can't do that. And you just put it in a government document that we could. And we went back and forth and back and forth. Ultimately, we came to an impasse, and I was not happy. And I was also a different guy than I am now, so the language might have been a little different than I'm giving you today. And he told me to get out of his office. And I said, I'll be glad to get out of your office. I had a CEO at the time. I've talked to Seth about him many times. His name's Dick Falcone, and he was a good leader. And he was watching this happen, and we've talked about it since then. He loved it. And the accounting department sat right outside this office. And so I walked out, and everybody's heads down, working. And we had the value statements, and it was about delivering on our customers. And I went over to that frame, and I thought it was like hanging on a nail, but it wasn't. It had like 6 bolts in the wall. And I ripped it off the wall, and I went in his desk, and I slammed it on his desk, and glass broke everywhere. And I'm like, you don't give a damn about our values. And he said, he was twice the size of me, but I was going to take him. He grabbed me by the collar, and he says, we're going to go have a beer. And we went to Cheddar's, and we talked about our differences at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. My exhortation to you guys is it's okay to be pastoral and to find peace. But guys, I'm looking to journey with some people that are ready to fight for the kingdom of God. And if these objectives are the wrong objectives, stand on the table. These are not me telling you what to do. I don't care. I care that it is vested deeply in your spirit that the Lord is knitting together something that's bigger than any of us can come up with. And I'm really, at 50 years old, I'm not interested in doing something that's not worth dying for. So, if you're interested in that, that's my objective for 2020. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to do a better job of casting vision, which I've done a poor job of doing. I'm going to put the frame up for what the Lord's calling leadership to. I'm going to hand pieces of those puzzles that are yet to be painted to good leaders. We've got people that went on the race when they were kids that now have 3 kids that are leading this place. Right? I'm handing it to you guys. You got to determine whether or not God's deeply called you enough to walk this out. And if the answer is yes in your spirit, this is a good place for you. All right? Thanks, guys. And we'll be moving some of these chips onto your poker table to play with over the coming weeks. All right? Thanks, folks.
Man. Thank you, Bob, for what you say and how you say it. Like, it's both of those things are equally important. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your holy aggression. I love it. Speaking of a little holy aggression, Seth, you want to talk about Global U? Yeah.
Yes. Don't you love Bob? I just love Bob. I just think what a good leader. I don't know why doesn't that show up in like the BCW? Like Bob's awesomeness needs to show up there somehow. I mean, I give him I give him the 5s or whatever you give for us. Yeah. I love it. I love the story about do something that's dramatic because you care. Let's see some passion. I want to be able to, in 25 years, give Andrew Shearman, if he's still around, his 100,000 leaders. He saw that. And I still firmly believe it. I think our odds are better now than ever before because this is a little bit more of a Gideon's army, but it's real. And when we're back to back with something that's real, you can fight. And I'm committed. So that's the kind of people that I met out on the Camino just a few days ago. So I just came back, met 26 of them, 7 leaders, 19 students. You got to realize there was nothing a year ago. A year ago, there was this idea that I had, and Josh had the same idea, and I'm like, can we do this thing? And he's like, yeah, I think we can. And we built it out of nothing. And the idea was that, if we had something that was more like a combination of the race, the best things about the race, with a school, that we could hold people accountable to growth probably in a lot more of a stern way than we can right now. Oftentimes, as SQMs and coaches, you suggest things and you give them coaching and then it doesn't happen. And you're like, what was that about? And you're like, well, I just didn't feel it. The feels weren't there. And I'm tired of that. I want to be able to say there's an assignment. It's due tomorrow. I'll see you then. And wouldn't that be a great thing to be able to do that? So that was kind of the thought behind this. Also, schools are 4 years. Like if we could get another year, if we get just not Global U as a year, but like 2 years or 3 years, then you got your 3-year journey. So these were all the kind of the thoughts behind why we have been doing hundreds of reference checks, hundreds of interviews. I mean, it's been a lot of work. Sometimes you wonder, what does Seth do? I've been doing that. And it's been hard. And we've got these 19 young people that I love. I mean, they're really good. I'm going to tell you about one, and I'm going to get Alina on the phone to tell you about another. And I don't think we'll use their names just because we want to be confidential. By the way, if you got a dream and you really feel it's from God, God will provide the resources. He will come through. While we're sitting here, while Bob is talking, there is one of our base people texts me and says, I just got a grant for $270,000. And I said, can I share that with everybody? He said, no. So that's why it's anonymous. You don't know who it is. You don't know who's giving it. You don't know where it's going. It is going to show up, and it's really needed. So God loves dreamers. You're going to hear that from me, because some of you wonder, what about my dream? Your dream is precious to the Lord. So here's my story. 10:30, I meet these 26 people coming off the bus, give them a 15-minute orientation, get them up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, we're out hiking. Blisters are happening, by the end of day 1. And day 2 and day 3, we're going 20 miles a day. And some of these, we have debated about whether this person, I'm going to call Jim, and this other person that we're going to call Janet, should be allowed on this is a lot, and I don't know if they can do it, and they're really not up to the same level maybe that everybody else is, and can they, and you know what, we fought for them, and they kind of got over their hump. And I remember talking to the one gal, and she would not say anything while I'm interviewing her on the phone for over 60 seconds, just silence, because she's an introvert, and she's an extreme introvert. Is she going to show up? And I'm going to call Lena in just a second. She's watching long distance right now, and you're going to get the story about her, about Janet. I'm going to tell you the story about Jim, who on the guy side was just, and by the way, that's the other cool thing about Global U, more guys than girls. So we're like fixing that issue. I expect to have, my dream is, we're going to triple next year, and then triple the year after that, and we're going to actually go past the race and have more guys than girls. Wouldn't that be a neat thing? I think there's a few people might get behind that, even though they don't clap. Jim, when we had our vulnerability time, raised his hand, stood to his feet, and almost with tears in his eyes says, I've never heard from the Lord. Like, I've never heard from the Lord. And Alina just texted me and said, this cool thing happened. Jim comes running up to me, and I could see that the Holy Spirit had been talking to him. And he was just spilling out all this stuff about what's going on, and they talked for 2 hours. And that's the other cool thing, is we got a ratio of 19 people to 7 staff, and they're really good staff. Like, the staff is unified. It's amazing how they're pouring in. She's got 2 hours with this kid, and at the end, he says, I think I do hear from the Lord. He's making it. Doesn't matter about his blisters. The pain's actually good. He hadn't had enough pain in his life. He's coming alive. So I'm just seeing, this is one of multiple stories. Before I left, I did a little bit of vulnerability. Other people did. We all did a big group hug. Then I got on a bus, and it was awesome. I'm like, this thing is working. And I just want you guys, I know it's obscure, but it's happening. Alina, you there? Yeah. All right, I'm going to put you up. All right, speak. Say something.
Can you hear me?
Kind of, but speak louder.
Okay. I have my mic on.
Yeah,
Or
all
should
right.
I turn up the mic?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you guys can hear it, right? Okay. So there's 100 or so people here, and you saw me on television. I was just calling the girl who that story was about. I called her Janet. Can you tell her story?
Yeah. Hi, friends.
Hey, Alina, you having a good time out there?
I'm having such a good time. We had a Sabbath today, so we've been just exploring Leon, Spain, and man, I could tell a million and one stories, but I'll just try to stick to one.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to share a story of Janet. So we, like Seth said, didn't quite know where she was going to stand with everything, all the challenges that we were giving the students and a vulnerability that we were really leading with. But we had an impromptu worship session the other night in a like open courtyard outside of a church. The students planned it. It was their idea. And we found a guitar from a random hostel, and we just started worshiping. And some of the other pilgrims and just passersby started joining us. People were sitting like right in the middle. They just came up and started worshiping with us. Different languages were being sung. It was really moving. But in the middle of this, Alexa stands up.
Oh, you just gave her name.
I got so excited.
It's actually a good story. She probably won't mind.
I asked her if I could send it to you.
Okay.
I got permission.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Janet, sorry. She stood up, soft-spoken as can be, and says, I think we need to pray for someone who has a hurt knee. Okay, well, looking around, we're all hurting. But we could tell that there was really someone that the Holy Spirit was highlighting for her. And it was actually a man that she had spoken to earlier on the Camino. And she goes over to him and she asks him if we can pray for her or for him. And he says, no, I don't want the group to pray for me. But she said, well, can I pray for you? And so she goes over there and just sits with them in the middle of worship. All the rest of us kind of pick up where we left up and start worshiping. And she prays over him for the rest of the time that we're worshiping, probably another 30, 45 minutes, just declaring healing over him. They talk a little bit more, and she's completely leading it on her own. If you knew this girl, she's so quiet. She's got such a tender spirit about her, and I just saw her come alive. She got so passionate, like her voice was strong and confident, and it was such a beautiful thing to see. I think it was really just a testament to the people that the Lord highlighted for Global U, and this group of 19 that we got on the field, like they're destined and God ordained to be here, and it's showing up in the coolest ways on the Camino, through conversations, through vulnerability. The way this team is coming together, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before.
That's awesome. Thank you, Alina. In the interest of time, I'm going to have to say goodbye. Everybody say goodbye to Alina. Say it again, because
Okay, I love you guys so much. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Alina. So, and you know, another cool story about redemption, Alina was one of those that was laid off. So she's alive. I mean, she's alive in ways that I never saw her alive before. And God is in this whole story. This story that's coming, I think we're like halfway through. And I don't like the hard parts, but I think we're coming out of the hard part, and I'm really seeing a lot of very cool things along the way. Who's next, Ben? Oh, Teresa. Where are you, Teresa? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, Teresa's going to talk about World Race America.
Yeah, I'll take both. I'm going to take both.
But so you might need it. I don't know.
Well, I wanted to give you an overview of World Race America just in case you didn't know what it was or anything like that. But it started with God giving me this idea in 2016 that we have 5,000 alumni. And if 5,000 alumni get activated at home, they could actually be the ministry host. And so we started World Race America in January. We have currently 14 people, 2 different teams traveling in 2 vans. Alumni are their ministry hosts, so they're going into parents' homes, and we're doing a lot of different things. And I believe that the World Race is actually like mini revivals. You've heard me talk about the Welsh Revival before, and that we come in, Evan Roberts with the Welsh Revival, he believed that you get rid of any unconfessed sin, you promptly obey the Holy Spirit, you witness. They learned that on the World Race. And so to see them bring that home and be activated in community, intimacy, and mission, and to see that happen, and we can see revival in America. So I'm fully believing for revival in America. I'm fasting 40 days right now, only water. And I really believe for 40 next year. I'm still believing for it, even though the deadline's closed. It doesn't matter. You know, when you have faith, you have faith. And so, but that's what I really believe is that if we're fully alive in America, we can see revival. And so I believe that's going to come from intimacy to start with, that they need to be fully alive to activate other people to be fully alive. And they're getting blown away on World Race America by hospitality. You guys, they barely pay for food. They go into homes and people just welcome them. When I was with them on a debrief, a neighbor came up to me, and I was having a one-on-one with one of the racers, and invited us to come into their home. We're sitting in their home, eating their pizza. They're telling us stories. We're sharing with them. They're praying for us. We're praying for them. And so it's really like a Matthew 10 experience where you're just getting welcomed in and staying where you're welcome. Community, I'm going to say their names, and I'm going to say specifically what I've seen in community with them. These are racers on the field. Melissa loves prophetic art, so she paints prophetic art and gives it to people. She was playing the guitar and playing worship in one of the couple's homes, and they decided as a result to have their family business be mission. Dawson, he is a pastor, so he'll sit with you and talk with you. His mom got activated when the World Race America team came to her home, and she decided she was always afraid to do mission. She came on PVT and everything like that, but she was afraid to do mission in America because we have a dichotomy in our thinking of what missions is in America. We think missions is different in America. I don't let people say that lie around me. When they say it's just harder in America, I said, no, it's not. World Race America is doing the very same thing that we do in Nicaragua. They're doing it in America. They're going into coffee shops and praying for people. So anyways, we go into his mom's house. She had gathered enough money to raise money to give bags to homeless. And so her and her friends and World Race America went out and actually shared and gave out homeless bags to people. And she said when they left, now I feel like I can do mission in America. And that was just a little activation. That was 1 week. Allie shared the gospel while rock climbing. And she had a conversation with an alumni at a bar. And you would be very happy if you could know who this alumni was. But all I'm saying is it was a disgruntled alumni. And she got 3 hours with her at a bar. When World Race America posted the meetup, like let's have the meetup, you know when they do that every place they enter. She said, why don't you go to this bar? And so I'm not sure she thought they'd show up. They showed up, and she got 3 hours with them. Amber, she'll give prophetic words, and she'll preach a powerful message. Another Amber on there, she'll go in the street and tell you about Jesus. Carolyn loves hospitality. She'll make you pancakes, and she'll make you feel welcome. She definitely does whenever I'm there. They are literally like a mobile church. When I was there for a debrief, Britt Baker, if you know her, she walked in and she goes, this is church. When I was there at the encounter, the day after the encounter, which was like our awakening with World Race America, a couple came into our living room where we were all gathered on a Sunday just talking about the encounter and what happened. And the couple walked in, didn't know us, and said, this is church. Just us being together. Alex said when she came on the World Race America, sorry, my mouth is super dry during this fast. It just gets dry all the time. I've never done a water fast before. I'm learning a lot of things. Anyways, I'm still alive. Woohoo! Okay. So that's a good thing. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, I made it. Okay, day 17. Okay, here we go. So Alex said that when she was on my squad, on X squad, she said when she finished the race, she didn't know how to replicate community back at home. But after being on the World Race America for 7 months, she knows she could go home right now and replicate community back at home in America. They have meals together, they pray together, they worship, they do feedback, we have debriefs, we have Expedition, 11 and 11, gap year, a little bit of everything. They grocery shop together, they sleep next to each other, all the things, but it's in America. Aunt Mary's home, they loved Aunt Mary's home. And when Aunt Mary was driving away, she felt like, I want to invite World Race America to come and stay with me. So they're very spontaneous too, and they ended up staying with Aunt Mary and loved her. They stayed at Flo's house, and her daughter is actually away on gap year. They had a stranger welcome them in at 9:30 at night. They didn't know where they were going to sleep because they also do ATL. Welcome them in and say, you can pitch my tent in San Francisco in downtown in the front of her yard on a little piece of grass. So World Race America pitched their tents right there. They're seeing alumni gatherings, and alumni are putting notes on their windows saying, hey, come stay with us, and things like that. Alumni are driving hours to see them. Yeah, there's a lot of things that keep happening. But as far as mission, I want to tell a few stories. So recently they were just in Ohio, and one of the friends has a dad who works with Bed Brigade. And what they do is every Saturday they go out and give beds to families. And so one family, this woman, she was living in a hotel with her 5 kids. And she had been praying. She's kind of spiritual, but had been praying for God to show up. And World Race America, along with Bed Brigade, showed up with 4 beds for her kids. And were able to give her a Bible and like a prayer shawl. And she started crying and saying, she had just prayed for God to help her. That's one of the things. Britt and Hannah. So Britt was my squad leader on my squad that's still on the field. And Hannah is a gap year racer that came on World Race America for community. That's why she came. We met her in Orlando at this end, and she decided to stay the whole time. She's 22. They're out ministering at the University of Boulder, and they see these 3 guys who were unchurched and start sharing the gospel with them. Britt's super prophetic and gets words of knowledge, so she starts giving the guys words of knowledge, and they just began ministering to them. This is the message she got from 3 young guys. Y'all, just wanted to say thank you for following Jesus. They're not Christians yet. Y'all, just wanted to say thank you for following Jesus, listening to the Spirit, and loving the Father like you do, really. To see the light in your eyes, the community of your team, the purity of your hearts as you pursue the Father's will. I can't put into words how God has used y'all to really fill me with his love, filled to overflowing. Your kindness, care, sacrifice, passion, and joy are a gift from God. I'm like, you were unchurched. Anyways, okay. Our time of worship and prayer will not be forgotten, but rather remain in my heart as a resounding reminder of the Father's love and faithfulness. His timing is perfect. The encouragement received on this trip came at just the right time. Discouragements, doubts, and questions were rising to their wobbly feet and beginning to eclipse the vision, heart, and hope of the Father. And then the Father brought a breakthrough. That's the University of Boulder. Then they were in Ohio, and this is an amazing story about the heart of World Race America is to activate alumni and to disciple and evangelize. And I believe it's also stirring up the Christians in general, because they were in Ohio. They went to church with their host, and Britt gets this guy highlighted to her. They go to lunch together. He said they had started an interdenominational prayer group, but they're really exhausted and just wrestling with vision. And they were on a week-long road trip, I guess, to get revitalized. And God gave Britt a vision and a word of knowledge that brought him to tears. And then they kept encouraging them. We invited them to dinner at the host house. So now they're bringing them home. And then they end up coming over for dinner, and they're sharing testimonies and stories and wisdom and revelation. And it was incredible, she said. And it's all the family around the table. She said, we felt so connected. They ended up staying with them for 2 nights and joining for prayer and intercession. And on the final prayer morning, it ended up going for almost 3 hours as we sought the Lord and cried for revival. We did corporate confession for the ways that they weren't trusting the Lord in his vision, and the presence of God was so thick. And we laid hands on them and prayed for them for new strength. And so this is just an example of Christians being encouraged that were strung out and burnt out. And then I'm going to finish with my own stories. I went to them at the Encounter, and we had leftover food. Thank you, Julia, that works in the catering company now. She was like, why don't you take out this food to people? So we went to the University of Missouri. And as we pull up, it's like we have these big trays of like leftover breakfast. So it's like eggs, hash browns, not sanitary, would not have passed any food regulations. Donuts, we had things like that. And so these big aluminum trays, and we pull up, and the police officers are there, and we're like, hey, we just want to pass out food. And he's like, you should park the van, World Race America van. You should just park the van and go and distribute the food. And we're like, good idea, thank you. So it's move-in day. So all the parents are there with their children and everything. So we park the van, we get out, we're literally walking around the University of Missouri like this. And do you want any food? And I think they think we're the welcoming committee. And so we're like, this is fantastic. I got to share the gospel with 2 Vietnamese guys, One had just arrived to America. Got to pray over a mom who's dropping off her firstborn. She was in tears by the time we finished praying for her. We ministered to Christians. We ministered to non-Christians. We prayed for people. We finally got in the line of the parents and the children of the car line, and we're just going up to windows. Every single window rolled down. We're like, do you want some eggs and hash browns, And giving out plates. Everyone was so thankful. The University of Missouri comes up, and they're like, hey, we're with Missouri State Insta Story. Who are you guys with? We're like, World Race America. And they just thought it was great what we were doing. And that's the University of Missouri. And then we also had leftovers again and went to Walmart. And I want to do it right, so I go to ask for permission. And I'm like, is it okay if we hand out like hot dogs and hamburgers for free in the front of Walmart? Sure. And so we did that and just got to share the gospel. I'm sharing the gospel with Rose. She's pouring out her life story in the front of Walmart while she eats her hamburger. So this is real life in America. And this is what's happening on World Race America. So I'm believing 2020 for 40 people still, holding out in faith for that. And I'm believing we're going to have a better year even than this year because we're going to add a discipleship program to it, a mobile discipleship program where we have a week, like 4 or 5 times during the year of intense discipleship and also debriefs. And we want to have awakenings and all that too. So thank you.
Wow. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the stories and the encouragement. Christina, you want to come up and talk about development?
Thanks.
Yeah, clap for her.
Yeah. And that's it. Thank you very much. How many of you guys have been on a parent vision trip, whether your own or volunteering or helping out? How many of you have been to an Adventures in Missions long-term base? And how many of you have found yourselves trying to explain what you do at Adventures in Missions or what Adventures in Missions does to a family member, and they just don't seem to quite wrap their heads around it? Well, this is what we're trying to remedy by inviting World Race parents to our bases, where we can not only cast vision for them about what Adventures in Missions does and what their kid is doing on the World Race, but they can actually experience it while they're ministering with us. So as Bob shared with you guys, one of our 2019 strategic objectives was to sustain parent engagement, resulting in at least 4% of the parents wanting to journey with us further. And as you heard Bob say, we way surpassed that goal, so much so that for 2020, we're saying our new goal is 30%. So I'd say that's a pretty good increase from 4% to 30%. We've really wanted to increase base support, and so we've been doing this through our PVTs. 13 out of the 20 PVTs that we've run this PVT season have either happened or are happening at a base, and then there's a little world map so you guys can see where they have happened. Guatemala, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Swaziland, India, Thailand, and Romania, which is a strategic ministry partner. And at each one of the PVTs, it's super intentional the way we engage with the parents. The ministry they participate in with their racers, the vision that's cast from the base, and also the invitation on how to get involved. Daniel Williams and his team in LTM have worked diligently with each base to make a field ministry development plan. And in that plan is what the base does, what the teams will do when they come to the base that contributes to those goals, and then what the needs are financially that contribute to those goals. And then from that FMDP, we all put our heads together and try to figure out what is a good invitation to the parents to get involved that has to do with that big picture goal. For example, in Guatemala, we decided on a $2,600 ask, so asking the parents to give towards 5 water filters and 3 stoves for each of 4 villages. In Ecuador, we asked for $3,000 to help finish a wall around the property and $500 for a new stove that they needed. In Nicaragua, it was $3,000 for phase 2 of construction of the dormitory. And in India, it was a $10,000 ask to build 20 churches at $500 each. And so a lot of factors go into how we decide what to invite the parents into. How big is the PVT? How long have the racers been there before their parents get there? Because if the racers have been there like 3 months, you betcha those parents are gonna like fall in love with what the racer has already fallen in love with. But if the racers have been there 5 days, it's a little harder to overcome that. You know, all the intricacies of parents and racers and introduction to a new ministry. And then, hey, by the way, would you like to donate? So it's a little harder when they first get there. And then what are they actually doing? Are they getting to contribute to the thing that we're asking them to give towards? So whenever possible, we always try to have the ministry be the thing that we're asking them to get involved with and give towards. The invitation is always also coupled with an invitation to pray for the base, get updates on what the base is doing, and Parent Ministry developed these little invitation cards where they can literally check a box on if they want to be an intercessor or go back on a team or give financially. And then Michelle, on her PVT to Ecuador, had this genius idea to tell the parents, you know, we all have something to give. And so if you don't feel called to give of your time and come back, or to give of your resources and donate, I would challenge you to turn the card around and write a word of encouragement to the base staff here, because we all have something to give. And the parents have really reacted so favorably to this. I wanted to share with you some of the statistics here. I am not a numbers person, but I spent a long time adding up these numbers to tell you. So 30.3% of parents said they would like to support financially what Adventures in Missions is doing. 30.7% said that they would return on a short-term missions trip. 16% actually gave financially. And then I love this one. We reached our financial goal on the PVTs 139% of the time. Which sounds ridiculous, but that's because sometimes it was like 500% of the goal, and sometimes it was like 20% of the goal. But overall, 139% of the time, we reached our goals. Wouldn't it be great if you could say that about all your goals? 139% of the time, I meet all my goals. I know. So we can be encouraged by that. And I got to talk to a lot of these parents on the phone afterward when I follow up with them, and their stories are just incredible. I mean, it's not just about the dollars that they've given. So many of these parents have had life transformation because of their time with us, and they're excited about what God's doing in their lives and their racers' lives, and they're excited to keep journeying with us. I wanted to share with you guys 3 stories, and then I'll stop talking. This first one is a church in India that was built after our India PVT. I got to talk to a mom named Joy, and Joy told me that she had been dreaming of being a missionary in India for 20 years, since she was in seminary. That she'd had this vision of going to India, but then she ended up getting married and having her daughter racer and didn't end up going. And so when she was at launch and heard that her daughter's PVT was probably going to be in India, she said her heart leapt, and she's like, I hope I get invited. And then when her daughter invited her to go to India, she was like, definitely going. And on the PVT, when Maria Horda invited the parents to give $10,000, which Maria and I were like, is that too much? Is that off-putting? But Maria really felt like the Lord gave her that figure. When she invited those parents to give $10,000 to build 20 churches that their racers would be a part of building after the PVT, Joy and her husband went to Maria that night. And Lindsay Sullivan was there, and Betty Means was there. And Joy said, we want to do a matching gift of half that amount, of $5,000. So can you tell the rest of the group that if they can give $5,000, we'll give the other $5,000, but we're anonymous, to the rest of the group. And they did. Within one day, the rest of the group pledged the money, and 20 churches were built. And this is one of them. And Joy was so excited. This mom was so stoked that her ministry, that her dream of doing ministry in India was going to live on way longer than her 5 days that she got to be there. So churches got built, her dream came true. It was great. The next picture is Tony and Barry Badinger. So this is actually, Barry is Allie's dad, Allie Badinger's dad. He's the fourth guy from the left sitting at the table. Tony and Barry were on the Guatemala PBT visiting Allie and her squad, the squad she was squad leading, and they just fell in love with what the Guatemala base was doing. This is Barry training under Dave Reeves on a men's trip in Nicaragua, and Barry is going to lead the first World Race Dads trip to Guatemala in February 2020. Yeah. And so Tony and Barry also volunteered at Parent Launch, both of them sharing their stories separately, Tony to the moms and Barry to the dads. And so this is just such a beautiful example of parent engagement and leadership development, the kind of stuff that we're really hoping for. And then this last one is a video I wanted to show you guys. This was just like the perfect microcosm of so many people, so many different departments coming together to make it happen. This is a video from a World Race team that they filmed going to the village where their parents were going to minister to. So it's like the foresight just blows my mind, but you guys can see it. It's 1 minute long.
With us in Calderas. We teach English classes, we do a Bible study, play soccer, and do house visits, and we're so excited for you to be a part of that. Can't wait to see you. Love you.
So on this PBT, the racers had obviously been there a while, enough time to go to I think they'd been there for 3 months. This was the very end when they had this PBT. They went, they filmed these videos, sent them to the parents ahead of time. The parents got there already excited. We invited the parents to give $2,600 for those 5 stoves and 4 water filters I told you about. They ended up giving $6,500. And then to date, that same group of parents have given $12,450 to the base. So it's not even just about, yeah, you guys can clap. To date, from all the parents on all the PBTs so far, we've raised $51,205 from the parents who've attended PBTs. And like I said, it's not about just the dollars. These parents are stepping up into what God has for them in the next season. And this video is just a perfect example of so many departments coming together to make parent engagement work. Parent ministry, LTM, the base teams overseas, oftentimes regional directors, donor relations, accounting. And it's amazing that we've been able to synergize to make it all happen. I know it's just the beginning. So next time you're trying to talk to a family member and they just don't really understand, try to take them to a base, because that's how we'll get them engaged.
All right. Thank you. Betty, come on up. Hey, sorry we're going to be a little bit late. We have, I think, maybe 2 or 3 more people, and actually some really, really important announcements at the end. Kill it.
Hi. When Travis asked me if I wanted to participate and share stories, I struggled to be able to share to be able to figure out which story to share, because we have so many stories of what God is doing through Beauty for Ashes. I think I want to start with this picture. This picture is a picture that was taken in India at our short-term mission trip this year. And God is doing amazing things in India. He is just stirring the hearts of women. So it began last year whenever we took a short-term trip there. And after we hosted a retreat for 2 days for 30-plus women. And after the retreat, 11 women raised their hand and they said, "Can we do this in our village? Can someone train us?" So our Beauty for Ashes coordinator trained these women. And then At the beginning of this year, there was 11 beauty fashion retreats happening around India, hosted by local women. It was just amazing. Yeah. And then we went back this year, and women again raised their hand at the end and saying, we need to be trained. Can we be trained again? But it does not end there, because now these women that are hosting retreats, they're meeting with these local women every single month. And then our Women of Peace, which is one of the pastor's wives, she meets with these facilitators every other month to encourage them so they could brainstorm of how they could continue doing ministry overseas. And this is happening. And we're not even doing it now. It's the local women doing this. I want to go to the next picture. This is a picture from our Beauty Fascist trip this year in the DR. Whenever we got there, there was another missions trip happening. And we were like, what? But it was an ambassadors team. And we partnered together and we hosted a Beauty Fascist retreat. And whenever our team went and asked the ambassadors if they wanted to participate, one of the participants said, we were just praying that y'all would invite us because we've heard so much stuff what y'all are doing. We didn't even know what was happening. And now I still connect with some of the women. And they're meeting up together. One of the ambassadors, she went back and told her mom about this beauty fascist thing that it's happening. And her mom traveled to meet up with this woman who was part of our team. And they're just like meeting together and encouraging one another. So it's happening even after the short-term trips end. Next picture. This is like one of my favorite pictures. And this is here in the States. One of the things that Beauty Fascist does is we not only have short-term trips overseas, but we host facilitator trainings twice a year here at our offices. And we had a mom of a gap year participant come several years ago and get trained to do Beauty Fascist retreats. She lives in Florida. She went back, and she's hosted multiple retreats since then. And she hosted her first retreat for teenagers, and she was so nervous. She called me. She's like, I don't know how this is going to go. I've only done it for older women. And whenever she said they did this retreat, and she crowned them with a crown of beauty, and they did communion together. And a lot of the girls at the end were saying, we did not know that God cared about us. Because they were just like, thought that it was like, just like, church was so boring, and it was just for adults. But these women, these young girls now know that that God is also pursuing their hearts, and that because they would always see retreats just for the women. So this was a very sweet experience. And this Christy, because she will be happy that I talked about her because she's just amazing. Christy, she's, like I said, been hosting retreats all over Florida. And she hosted a retreat for a girl named Brandy, who has the yellow shirt on this picture. She came to our facilitator training because she's like, I want to do what you're doing also. She went back to Florida and hosted several retreats. And this was a retreat that happened 2 weekends ago. And I asked her, I'm like, Brandy, what do you have to walk away with? She's like, I have so much, but can I just share this one story? There was this woman who came, and she was really quiet. And at the beginning of the retreat, she said, my heart is broken in 3 pieces, and it's locked in a box, and I don't know how to unlock that box. And at the end of the retreat, this woman said, not only is my heart unlocked, but it's being made whole. And they told her, and she during our Beauty Fascist retreats, we invite them to hear from the Lord, ask the Lord. And they invited her to ask the Lord, Lord, what do you want to do with my broken heart? And she felt that the Lord told her that he wanted to mend her heart with gold. And somebody told her about that art in Asia, how you bring back together broken pieces with gold. And she looked up on the internet during the break, and the very first thing that popped up was a necklace with a heart broken in 3 pieces, put together in gold. And she's like, I'm ordering that. That's like what God has for me. But I also wanted to share stories that I don't have pictures, but they're worth sharing. Just yesterday, I was talking with a participant who went on our trip to Rwanda this past year. And I led that trip. And every time we would go visit homes or we were hosting retreats, I would ask her, Carol, would you like to pray for someone? She was so quiet, very timid. And at the end of the retreat, I saw her opening up more. And when I called her yesterday to check up on her and see how she's doing so I could accept her on the team, I told her, like, how has your life changed since the trip, and why are you wanting to come back on a trip with us next year? She said, I learned on that trip that I could also talk to God privately and publicly. I did not know how to talk to God, and it's dramatically changed my life, where now I want to invite people into my conversations with God. And I said, that is amazing. And she's like, and I also want to invite my daughter, because I did not teach her how to hear from God growing up, and I want her to learn that overseas like I did. And that was just so beautiful to hear from her, that she wants to share what God is doing in her heart, also with her daughter. And also, right now, we have a short-term trip happening in Colombia. And I just spoke with the trip leader before this meeting, and I asked her, I'm like, Ruth, what is God doing there? Well, she said, number one, the team being here right now is so timely, because they are ministering with women who are going through a rehab program. And one of the women, lost a child. So there's just this heaviness of sadness over the entire group. And she said, one of the girls said, I knew I had been needing to share my pain for a while, but I wasn't ready and I was afraid. But now after sharing, I am free. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this. So that was just so beautiful for her to begin to experience healing as she's sharing those broken parts of her story. I could go on and on what God is doing in Beauty for Ashes, but most importantly, I just believe that God is awakening up women's hearts. One of the things that we're seeing are older women, and this is what we hear a lot in our trainings. There was a calling in my life when I was young, but I got married and I had children, and I could not follow my calling. And I feel like God is breathing life over those dreams and over those callings, and women are waking up and they're answering the calling. And it's like our mission is to awaken up a generation. It's a generation not just of younger people, but older people as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I want to welcome up everybody's favorite retired training camp announcement giver, El Jefe.
Hey guys, I just want to share a little story with you. Back in 2013, Adventures in Missions introduced a pretty significant change to strategy and a unified place for collaboration and for communication. And it was a pretty significant change within the organization. I was talking to my wife a couple weeks ago about this, and she was talking about how hard it was and how all she wanted to do is go back to the way that we used to do it. And why do we have to do things? Why can't we do it the way that we've always done it? So it was a pretty difficult change for her and for those that worked alongside of her, her coworkers and other people who were here back in 2013. Some of you might be familiar with that tool or that resource. It's Gmail, Google Drive, and Google Calendar. All right? So I'm going to show you a quick video, and then I'll talk about the rest of this. All right. So I didn't make that video, but it's pretty awesome. Asana in its most simplistic form is a task management system, but it is so much more than that. We've been building out this Asana platform with some strategic teams as well as managers starting back in early February. So we've really taken our time to introduce a product and a resource that we feel like is going to be extremely valuable for the organization. And so I am really excited to introduce that we're going to be rolling out Asana to all of you within the next couple of weeks. So one of the things that I feel that Asana will allow us to do is Asana will create a space for us to be better at what we do and allow more time to focus on what we're called to do. So freeing us up to be able to go after what the Lord's put inside of our hearts and do some of the tasks that often seem difficult to make those things more easy, streamlined, and create some better communication strategies around the organization. So aside from that, a few things that it will help us do is to reduce time wasted on unnecessary meetings and conversations. We all love meetings, but we'll have to reduce some of those because Asana will allow us to do that. Simplify and expedite interdepartmental projects and some of the cross communication and collaboration that's currently a bit of a struggle at times. It'll provide transparency and accountability for individual workloads. For a manager, it is brilliant to be able to see what your teams are doing and to motivate them in the specific ways that they need it. Identify and correct broken systems and timelines. Sometimes our timelines don't necessarily intertwine with each other, and that makes workflow really challenging when working across departments. So it'll allow us to be able to do that. So what we're going to do is over the next couple weeks, we're going to introduce some trainings. Immediately after this meeting, you'll get an email or a Google Drive document that'll allow you to select a meeting time specifically by side your name, and from there we'll send you an invitation to the actual training. And those trainings will happen in the next couple weeks. So yeah, we're super excited and pumped for this tool, and I can't wait for you to see what it has to offer. Thanks.
If you struggle with task management, you're going to geek out on this stuff. I'm that guy, and I'm excited about it. Jennifer Gonzalez for fundraising and support raising.
Hey. Okay, so I have good news too. So we have 12 days to the end of our fiscal year, and currently we are set to be 99.22% of the way there. So pretty awesome news, right? So today we have an opportunity to, because we are together as a team, I know not everybody's here. There are several people who have told me that they will be watching, so hello. And we have an opportunity to come around the people who are still working on raising support, to love them, to show them that we care, to pray for them, and to just basically ask them what they need and how we can help. So our prayers with raising support are incredibly important because support raising is very much a spiritual battle. As we raise support, we're not just asking for funds. What we're doing is we are mobilizing not just our participants, but through this, we're mobilizing our friends and our family in the Great Commission. So that's something more like what Bob was talking about. That's an infinite thing. That's something that goes and goes and goes. So it's something that we also need to really be praying about. So right now, I'm going to invite some people, if you are willing. If you are someone that's still working on support, I'm inviting you to come front so that we can pray for you. I'm also inviting you, if you are doing great with support and you have already completed your goal also, but you would love to have somebody pray for you, I would be honored if you guys could come forward so that we could all pray over you now. So come on. Come on. The Bible says that two are better than one. There are a whole lot more than two in this room. Hey, do you have that slide to put up? Okay. So now if you guys can gather around, we're just going to do the Swaziland thing. Come on over here. So if for the rest of you that are in this room, if you could stand up and come to pray over these people. There's a verse of scripture up here that's one of my favorite blessing verses. So you can bless that over people. Come on, people. Put a hand on somebody else. We could use some prayer. I'm going to stand in the spot for all of the people that are listening. So go ahead and pray, and then Dion's going to close us out.
So, Father, we just say thank you. Thank you for the yes that's in the hearts of everyone standing here for you in your kingdom. Thank you that you are more than we need. And your word says to us that we need to make our requests known to you with thanksgiving. So, Father, for everyone here that still needs support raising, we ask that you will supernaturally step into every person's life and situation and raise up the support, the people that they might not even know yet. Send people so that they can know this is from you and help them to meet that support goal for the year. We also thank you for the ones that can say, standing here, that we've met it. It's your faithfulness, and we want to give you the glory and the honor for that. Father, also thank you that the mission doesn't stop here. It continues. We will continue having a yes in our spirit, in our heart for you. And thank you that your calling is also our enabling. And so we thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Have a great rest of your day.